Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. For today's video, I'm guest designing for Scrappin' for Less, and I'm going to be using the Flavor of the Month card kit for August 2020. So this month's kit is all about bubbles. Bubbles in the bathtub, chewing gum bubbles, bubbles under the sea, and tiny bubbles. The card kit features 4 collections with kind of a similar theme across each collection. I have the double dip kit, but there is also a banana split level that includes an additional bag of goodies. So I'll just share my contents of the kit, starting with collection number 1. So you saw the stamp. The stamp set features those adorable duckies. In each of the collections, there's also an envelope. I had some white ribbon in my collection, some enamel dots, and finally some Bubbles in the Tub paper by Scrappin' for Less. I don't think my camera's doing justice to these papers, but they are double-sided and on heavy cardstock. Collection 2 is called Country Bubbles. And in that collection, you get some paper ephemera. You get the most adorable chicken stamp by Scrappin' for Less. There is a piece of pink organza ribbon. Again, you'll get some enamel dots by Gina Marie Designs, and then the pattern paper by Scrappin' for Less. So these are, again, double-sided, and these have kind of a gloss finish to them, which I really like. For collection number 3, this one's called Sea Wishes. There's a piece of pink and white twine. You'll also get some more enamel dots in yellowish color. There's this fantastic large stamp by Scrappin' for Less. And then the paper is also by Scrappin' for Less. And I have to tell you, aside from the ducks, these were my favorite pattern papers. And finally, we're on to collection number 4. In this collection, you'll get some ephemera pieces. And I do use one of those for my sentiment in one of my cards. And then you get this one more ephemera piece. The ephemera pieces are by Scrappin' for Less. And then this little adorable dragon blowing his bubbles, also by Scrappin' for Less. And in each collection you do get an envelope. In this one you happen to get some sequins and enamel dots. And then finally some pattern paper by Scrappin' for Less. Now again, these are double-sided, but most of them had like an ombre solid side to them, and then the opposite side had the bubbles. In the kit, you also get some cardstock. This is 100-pound high quality cardstock. There is a shade called Blue Raspberry, Night Shift Blue, Snow Cone, Lemon Drop. I think this one is Cotton Candy, and Grape Jelly. You also do get 2 sheets of white cardstock for your card bases. And this is 100-pound cardstock. Now, I made 6 cards using the 4 collections, but I had enough product to keep going. So you really do get a lot of value for the price of this kit. So for card number 1, I'm using the contents of collection 1, and I did all of the coloring and used my scan and cut off screen just to save a little time. But I do have a blog post where you can see the color combinations I used, and I have that link down below. And on most of these cards, I started with a sketch design from a collection of card sketches that I have, but I just kept deviating from it. So I just didn't bother sharing the sketch I started with because it kind of looked nothing like the sketch. So anyway, back to the card. I die cut 2 of the pattern papers from collection 1 using a large stitched rectangle die by Fawn. I adhered a thin strip of black cardstock just to kind of break up the 2 patterns, and I did leave this part of the video in because sometimes when you're watching a video, you kind of get to see the parts I want you to see. You don't get to see the mistakes, and we all make them. You know, you start with the design in your mind and it just kind of goes sideways. So here I've attached all of my components to the card front, and I absolutely hate it. So we're just going to do a little bit of surgery, and I have my small scissors, and I'm just cutting around the vellum. I'm cutting the vellum off. I put enough foam squares on my image that thing just is not coming off, and that's why I'm cutting off the vellum. And then where I have the sentiment and I adhered the little bubbles stamped image, I did not place those in the right position. To me, it looks like something that should not be on a rubber ducky card. So we're just going to rip that off, and a little piece of the pattern paper does rip, but we're just going to create a sentiment strip to cover that up. I treated the piece of black cardstock with some anti-static powder, and then I'm just using Versamark ink to stamp down the sentiment, and then I'll white heat emboss it. I did use a fishtail banner die to die cut that sentiment, and then here I'm just using my T-square ruler to adhere that strip evenly onto my card, and then I'll just trim a little bit of that off, and that will complete card number 1. Moving on to card number 2, I'm using collection number 2. So here's a little tip if you are the type that loves pattern paper so much that you hate to cut it. So any part that of the pattern paper that's going to be covered by another piece can simply be cut out and saved for later. I'm going to mat one of those pattern papers that I'm using on my card using the Night Shift Blue, and I just kind of adhered it in one corner, and I'm using my paper trimmer to trim around, leaving just a slight edge. And then I will do that same thing to this piece after I do some ink blending. This is peacock feathers, and I'm just ink blending that little square I die cut using a stitched rectangle die. And then I will ink blend a piece of smooth cardstock with mowed lawn. And I do use a simple grassy hillside die by Fawn to die cut that piece. And I can go ahead and adhere those together to start creating my little scene. I die cut some more of that Night Shift Blue cardstock using a stitched sentiment die, and then I can go ahead and stamp out my sentiment. I'm again using Versamark ink, and I will heat set that in place with white embossing powder. And then here I'm ready to start adhering my card together. I have the background panel that looks like a frame but won't be. I'm adhering that to a white A2 size card base, and then I have my second piece of paper, pattern paper, that I've matted with the Night Shift Blue cardstock, and go ahead and adhere that down. And then I will use some fun foam to pop up that last panel, which I did also add some Night Shift Blue cardstock to mat it. And finally, I'm going to add some fun foam to the back of the sentiment strip to adhere that down. And the fun foam does have adhesive on one side, and then I just use some liquid adhesive to add it to my card. And then finally, all there is left to do is just add my little chicken. That duck stamp really kind of won my heart from this kit, but this chicken comes in pretty close. So from collection or card number 3, collection number 3, I've used the stamp set and stamped it onto a piece of Neenah Silver White. And then I did color the entire thing using my Copic markers. I'm going to stamp the sentiment directly down onto my panel. I am using Versa Fine Onyx Black ink, and then I do add some clear embossing powder over that and melt it with my heat tool. So we have the missing rectangle again from a piece of pattern paper. I'll go ahead and adhere that piece to my top folding A2 size card base. And then the second pattern paper, the square that I used a stitched rectangle die, I'm going to add some of that Night Shift blue cardstock to the back, just to break up those two patterns. Oh, I guess then I do add the other panel onto the cardstock, and then I use my trimmer to trim up the panels. I'll go ahead and adhere my first panel down to the card base using some liquid adhesive, and then I grab my focal point panel and I am going to use some fun foam to pop that up, and then I will add that to the center of my panel. I do add a little bit of sparkle to my fish using the Spectrum Noir Glitter Overlay pen, and I think I do add a little bit to the cake. And then I will finish off this card using those yellow enamel dots. I honestly can't remember if they were from this collection, but the yellow enamel dots kind of ties in the background paper. So that will finish off card number 3. Card number 4, I'm using collection number 4, and we're going to make a shaker card. Here I'm showing you all of the die cut pieces and the dies that I used to die cut all of the elements. I used a stitched rectangle die to die cut the grape jelly cardstock, and I'm adhering it to the top folding A2 size card base. And then my pattern paper piece, I just kind of used a trimmer to trim that out. I honestly am not much of a measure kind of girl. And then those are some vinyl sticker-like strips that I got in a card kit some time ago, and I just thought I would use up what I have. You could instead just cut a thin strip of black cardstock and adhere it, but I thought these just were perfect to separate my pattern paper and the background. For the shaker element, I die cut a piece of black cardstock with a Lawn Fawn circle stitch die for the back, and then I've also die cut the grape jelly cardstock with a stitched frame circle die. I've added my acetate using some liquid adhesive, and then I have these foam strips by scrapbook.com, which I believe is part of the banana split level. Anyway, I'll finish building out my shaker wall, and then I'm going to use the sequence that I got in collection number 4 and add the black circle die cut to close up the shaker. Give it a little shake, and then I can add it to my front panel using some liquid adhesive. To add a pop of some bright color, I'm using one of the ephemera pieces from this collection as my sentiment banner. And there is some yellow in that sequence mix, so it just kind of ties in with all of the colors. Anyway, I have my little dragon colored, cut, and adhered using some foam squares. Moving on to card number 5, I'm using collection number 2. I told you guys I just love that little chicken. And I do love the pattern papers as well. There's something just so country vintage-ish about them. It's a fine love-hate relationship I have with pattern paper because as much as I love it, I hate using it. I just really want to collect it and keep it forever. Anyway, I used a tag die to die cut one of the pattern papers, and then I've added a piece of black cardstock for my mat. Here I'm attempting to use my crocodile to add an eyelet, but it's kind of been forever and a day since I've used this thing. I literally have to reference the instructions off to the side of my screen to get that eyelet on my tag properly. And I did struggle a little bit here. I've grabbed the pink organza ribbon and I've looped it through my tag. And then I've also die cut a second tag and used that as my sentiment onto a piece of black cardstock. And then I've just kind of adhered them together or looped them through that ribbon together. And I've popped up the centerpiece onto some fun foam. And then I've adhered it down onto my card base. I've added my focal point image of that little chicken and added just a couple of enamel dots to finish off this card. And finally, we're on to card 6 using my favorite collection, number 1. And for this card, I used a gift box cover-up die by MFT. I also die cut a piece of vellum using an oval stitch die. And I had to be very strategic with the pattern paper because that paper is actually the back of the first card that I made. So there was not an entire sheet of that pattern paper left, but I really wanted that one, so I just kind of had to piece the panel so that I could get those 4 inlay pieces. Anyway, we're going to start adhering all of the die cut pieces together onto an A2 sized card base. I die cut a panel of snow cone cardstock using a large stitched rectangle die, and I added that to my card base. And then I've popped up the box cover up frame with some foam adhesive and added that to the background. And then here I'm taking those die cut pieces from the frame and just adhering those directly down using liquid adhesive. I'm adhering the sentiment strip onto that vellum. I did die cut a piece of black cardstock and stamped out happy birthday using Versamark and white heat embossed it. And then I will take my focal point image and I have popped it up on some fun foam. And then I'm just going to adhere that directly down and finish off this card by adhering it to my background and of course adding some sparkle. So that will complete my 6 cards using the Flavor of the Month August 2020 card kit by Scrappin' for Less. I do encourage you to head on over to my blog to see close-up photos, as well as a link to a RAFFLECOPTER for a chance to win a prize from Scrappin' for Less. Hop along to see what the other design team members and guest designers have created using the August card kit. And if you are new to Scrappin' for Less, hop on over to the website to see all that Teresa has to offer in her store. That is all for me. As always, I want to thank you for stopping by. I always appreciate you leaving a comment and a thumbs up if you've enjoyed this video. And if you are new to my channel, please consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell to be notified the next time I upload a video. Thank you for spending a little time with me today, and I will see you next time.